All right, everybody, thank you for joining me today for our Holidays 2023 webinar. We'll be diving into insights, trends, and just influencer marketing musts to have the right execution for this holiday season. I'm your host, Ryan Hilliard. We'll get started in a couple of minutes, but if you're here for the holiday webinar, you're in the right place. We usually like to kick off 1 or 2 minutes past the hour just to make sure that we give everybody a chance to grab their coffee, grab their lunch, move between meetings. So stay put for about a minute or two, and then we'll get things kicked off. While we're waiting, I have a captive audience, so I will take this time to share some of the upcoming content that we also have in the future weeks. So, in about a week and a half, we'll be doing a dive into building compelling influencer marketing content. So, what makes posts perform really, really well? How come I followed best practices once and it seemed to be great, and then I did best practices again and it seemed to perform really, really poorly? Like, what are those pieces of content that are just really, really compelling when it comes to influencer marketing? That will be on Tuesday, November 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So about a week and a half. And then a couple of weeks after that, we'll be doing another live series webinar. So if you didn't join me a couple of weeks back, we did a live series webinar on influencer discovery, where in the moment I actually dove into using Hypewire to find high quality, relevant, but still very niche creators and actually analyzing what they're doing. We'll be doing that same sort of format of a live series, but diving into the winners of Cyber 5 2023. We'll be using some market analysis tools to break down what other brands are doing, what kind of creators were they partnering with, what was the success that they saw, where did it come from. So that will be immediately following that Cyber 5 week. It'll be Friday to give us some time to pull that content together, to pull brands together. But that will be a really insightful webinar that we have in a couple of weeks on those Cyber 5 winners and how do you make sense of what's happening in the market and why they're successful. So 2 more pieces of content coming up in the future weeks. So be sure to join me there. As everybody continues to join the room today, you're in the right place. This is our Holidays 2023 webinar. We'll be talking about insights and trends from holidays past, as well as influencer marketing musts to ensure the right execution on your Q4 campaigns. I'm your webinar host, as usual. My name is Ryan Hilliard. I'm the GM of Americas here at Hype Auditor. My colleague Nick and I have spent a lot of time putting this together. This is actually the first really significant webinar we did last year. So it's always cool to come full circle, take a look at what happened last year, some new insights based off of different performance, different metrics that we saw from really top performing brands. And so we try to pull all of that together here. A couple of housekeeping things. Please post any questions, comments, insights, things that you want to share in the comments for this live stream. We are recording this as well. So if you're unable to stick around for the whole thing, if you want to invite a colleague, you can send the link that you received for the email to access the live stream. You can send that along. That's where the recording is. That's where the YouTube video will live. We'll also send out the email after the webinar so that you can share it along with others. But please feel free to share it. You can always come back and reference it later. And with that, we'll go ahead and get kicked off. So today's sort of objective is to go through different holiday trends from what we saw in 2022 and how that informs what we're going to do in 2023. We're going to go through 9 tips for nailing holiday execution when it comes to influencer marketing. Now, influencer marketing is just one piece of the marketing machine. So fast, responsive, mobile-friendly website, strong conversion funnel, like all of those things also go into this, are going to really accelerate results. But from an influencer marketing and creator marketing perspective, what do we need to do to get the most out of this holiday season, this gift giving season, this really critical period for most brands and agencies representing those brands? And then we'll have Q4 reminders, which are sort of underlying tidbits that we need to always have in our head as we're approaching these different initiatives, as we're contextualizing some of these facts and ideas and insights that we're putting together. So those are going to be the three topics that we're going to go into today. Once again, feel free to post your comments or questions within the chat, and we'll go ahead and just get kicked off. So, holiday trends. One of the things that we hear from brands all the time is, can I just post the content myself? I got a bunch of followers. People love my brand. I'll just post content for the holidays myself. I don't need to invest in creative partnerships. They haven't done as well for me, or I don't like the ROI of them compared to some other channels, whether that's a valid way of looking at it or not. And so they think I'll just do post myself. And what we've seen from the data, just looking at last year, and we're looking at Instagram here specifically, just to try to narrow where our focus is. It's just a lot of data out there. We see that brands really do go all in on posting around their promotions for Black Friday, whatever those special offers are. But influencers are much, much more effective. They drive a much, much higher engagement rate. And if we can think of that engagement as authentic engagement rate, that will eventually drive those sales, because it's authentic engagement with this audience, this relevant audience, it's potentially 3 times more effective than what your brand's going to do. Now, you shouldn't not post content from your brand account, right? This is an obvious thing to do, but it isn't a replacement for an influencer or creator management strategy, because the amount of engagement that they can drive as an individual with a following that's following them for all intents and purposes, what content they're putting out. Most people aren't following your brand because of the content you put out. They're usually following it because they like your products or goods or services or whatever it may be. Even if you do put interesting content out, that's not necessarily what attracted them there. It's different for influencers. And so influencers we saw last year drove 3 times higher engagement at a 1.08% engagement rate versus 0.29 for brands. Not as many accounts were in this analysis, 65,000 compared to 125,000. So a smaller percentage, but much stronger results. So again, if you're investing in a creative strategy or you're launching a program, this is the place to be. It's definitely what we've seen drive a lot of results versus just simply posting from your brand account. When does everything seem to start? Well, it's almost any day now. I got an email from, I think it was Lowe's Home Improvement, that they've got their Black Friday appliance sale going now, right? Everything seems to start earlier and earlier. There's a couple of reasons for that, right? Compressing the purchase period can really cause a lot of strain on individuals in terms of the money that they have to buy things. It also, there's a lot of research that goes into buying big purchases. And so you want to give people time to do that research, to not miss out on the deal, to not hold off. And so we definitely see things start earlier and earlier. Last year, from an influencer marketing content perspective, we saw this sort of uptick of like, oh, here's a notable ratcheting up of influencer content on Black Friday on the 14th of November. And then you can see it really just scales up. Now that dip is a Saturday, Sunday before the Thanksgiving week, but you just see it really scales up and then ultimately peaks on that Black Friday. And if we were to put on top of this Cyber Monday or Cyber 5 as well, you'd see it continue to extend out beyond just Friday to Monday or Tuesday. But 12 days, or for this year, probably the 15th, I think is what it looks like on the calendar for that Monday, is when you should expect to see volume increase, activity increase for Black Friday. You should begin to put content out and see people interacting with it. People are beginning to get prepared. If you've already done it, I think you're probably even better off than if you're waiting that long. But that's just what we saw from our analysis of the data when that uptick started happening with creators. Most of the time, partnerships happen with nano and micro influencers, so smaller tier influencers, smaller audience, higher engagement rates, but smaller reach, right? So these are partnerships where a brand, if you're going to work with a nano influencer and you're just doing the math in terms of conversion rates and the value I want to get from this, you need to partner with a lot of nano influencers to drive significant sales volume. And so that's what we see reflected out. Interestingly, though, micro and macro influencers, or not like macro, micro and mid-tier influencers, the amount of activity from them way outperforms the distribution of how many we have, right? There's an allotment of this many influencers of this many tiers, sort of like a bell curve. Micro and mid-tier actually over-index, essentially. There's more partnerships going on with them. And I think it makes sense. You get to balance this higher level of engagement rate They're not quite celebrities, so there's not that same cost, but they still drive performance. And there are a lot of those cases they're already monetizing uh, their audience and what they're trying to do, and so there's a little bit more experience there. So if you're thinking about this in terms of what am I doing as a brand, where's my strategy? Well, it might be too late to take a whole lot of action here. But if you feel like, hey, I've got a lot of partnerships with people from 10 to 100,000 followers, then you're in the right place. This is where you want to be in terms of seeing that performance. It's okay to be on the nano side. It's just you need to make sure that that volume is there. If only 10% of the people see the content and 10% of them engage, very quickly you get to a small number of people even getting through to your website. So if you're sitting there with just a few nano influencers for your campaign, maybe it's time to try to quickly get a few more into your sequence just to try to get more value out of that program. In terms of what kinds of influencers are putting out Black Friday content, this is often a point of feedback that we hear from brands as we're talking to them. They say, I've got a fashion brand, I'm not a beauty brand, so I'm not going to put out any of this content. We actually see a really, really spread distribution of the types of creators and the content that they're putting out. Beauty and clothing, yeah, they're very much at the top, but music is really, really high in terms of posts that include Black Friday. Shopping and retail, family, fitness obviously makes sense. It'll be even bigger as you get to January, but seeing that it's very, very spread means that almost any industry you're in as a company should be thinking about this strategy, thinking about where is my audience, because in reality, your audience is going to be following these different creators. And even if you're selling luxury goods or once in a lifetime purchases, it's still the same end user and buyer. They're going to be out there. And so this is the time to get in front of them, right? Beyond Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and if anybody that's ever interacted with me before from my agency experience or working at a software company before this, it's talking about that period after that peak, right? We tend to think of Cyber 5 as like we're prepping for Cyber 5 and then we're good to go. What I'm here to remind you is the volume and interest around sales and purchases stays almost the same after Cyber Monday. Yes, there's this peak on Black Friday for sure, and there's a lot of in-store shopping, but if you don't nail the sales Black Friday, Cyber Monday, there's still this opportunity for the next 2 or 2.5 weeks to drive that volume before your last ship date. And if you're selling services or electronic goods, like up until the day before Christmas would be like that sort of like final peak in terms of purchases. And so take those learnings, take the knocks. If you have knocks from Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you can still see a lot of value and drive a lot of revenue over those next 2 weeks. It's not lost just because of Black Friday. There's a couple of insights as to why that might be the case that we'll go into towards the end of this slideshow. But just to remind you again, and remind everybody, hey, if we nail these 2 days, these 5 days with the weekend, that's good, but we still have 15 more days that we need to knock out of the park. Really, that's what we should be counting on. So that's sort of our insights. That's sort of our catch up, our recap of what happened last year from an influencer marketing perspective. Now we're going to dive into tips for the holidays. If you're thinking it's November 2nd, Ryan, it's a little too late for these tips. You're probably right in some sense, right? This is a good reminder. Think about your strategy now, and we're checking boxes, right? We want to make sure, yes, did we do this? Yes, did we do this? What can we tweak right now? If you're starting from zero, God bless you. It's going to be tough. Like this is going to be a sprint. There's not a whole lot of time left. But for those of you that have prepared, that are ready, this is just going to be a good reminder of like, okay, yes, do we have this in place? Are we situated well here? Are we checking all of our boxes? Do we feel like the execution can happen? So the first, and this is one that's probably going to begin to rear its head this week, even maybe into next week for sure. Always, always, always be partnering with creators for multiple posts. Some of the most impressive value that we've seen with multiple post interactions and partnerships between brands and creators is especially when this partnership starts with a post a week or two before the sale, priming their audience for like, hey, I'm doing this partnership. This sale is coming. Be ready, right? Doing multiple posts the day of Black Friday can be great, but you've not sort of primed this audience for what to expect. And so doing it in advance is really, really important. one of the examples that we called out here is Fashion Nova, Kids Nova. Um, uh, what we really, really liked about this from this creator was it's a similar background, right? It's the same idea. It's consistency for the audience. Hey, on November 5th, hey, I'm going to be doing this partnership. Hey, we're getting ready for this partnership. And so then when the post drops on the 25th, the feel is almost identical and the audience is ready. Okay, we've been waiting for this coupon code that you're going to provide to me, and now I'm going to go use it. And we see that really, really strong engagement rate from priming the audience. Having really, really compelling offers is awesome. Dropping a really compelling offer onto somebody when they may not be ready for it and saying you have to act now doesn't always pan out very well, especially if you have goods that are a little bit more of a considered purchase. So making sure that these partnerships that you have are getting folks ready at least a week in advance. And looking into Fashion over here specifically, it wasn't just the 5th and the 20th. It's always also having something on the 15th, like just this sort of reminder, hey, we're doing this. Remember, be ready for this big sale, this big partnership that we're going to have in place. And then you'll see the results there. The second tip we have, and this is something that can sometimes be overlooked, you have this very established ambassador program, or maybe it's like it's been there for a while, but you don't get a lot out of it. And you've sort of shifted your strategy to be like, we're just going to partner with bigger creators. Don't neglect your existing ambassadors. Uh, their authenticity from being an ambassador is really going to multiply the results that they see during this time of year. And if you have a huge engaged ambassador program with this really, really significant reach, I would start there before you even think about a completely different creator and rolling the ball there, because there's just this risk and reward. With these people that are members of your brand ambassador program, they're investing into this, right? They're willing, they're able, they're very aligned. You've approved them usually to join. Give them all of the power during this time to make something compelling for their audience. So Gymshark is probably one of the most sort of like legendary brands in influencer marketing space and leaning on their ambassador program. But you see the value really, really ratchet up these partnerships, giving them the ability to offer more compelling discounts, more value for their audience than anybody else, and more than they normally would be able to. And the engagement that they're going to drive is only going to go further up. Plus, there's going to be a greater willingness to put links in bio and take over a little bit more of their content because they're familiar and comfortable with you as a brand than, let's say, somebody that's a celebrity that's planning to do a lot of different partnerships over the next few hours even. So lean into those ambassadors. Types of content. This is all of the above answer. Do not think that there's this, if I just do posts, or if I just do stories, if I just do reels, I only do that will be most effective. No, it's all about sort of a blend. You need to be spreading that investment out because you don't know sort of what mindset or time frame you'll be reaching this person that's consuming the content. Will they be on a subway heading into the office? Will they be sitting at the kitchen counter eating breakfast? Will they be moving between two meetings? It's all about presenting different formats so you can stay in front of people. Now, all that said, one thing that we definitely recommend based off of performance that we've seen from really high performing brands like Shein is leaning very, very heavily on reels as well. Now, video content can sometimes be a little bit more expensive to produce, a little bit more difficult to coordinate. It doesn't feel as real as maybe a story would. But one thing that we always recommend is when you see brands that have built their business, not their entire business, but they have really become a name brand through this influencer marketing channel, there's times to replicate. Hey, what are they doing? They have a lot of power and insight behind this. We should lean into what they're doing a bit. And so what we saw from Shein last year was almost half of their content was reels, right? And so that makes sense, but it does require a little bit more of an investment up front, making sure that, hey, are we approving this content? Do we feel good about what they're putting out? Are we willing to invest a little bit more in terms of the content creation? But we definitely saw that this is an area where we can see a lot of engagement, drive a lot of value, and then that potential for some virality as well. Stories are still great, right? But you're going to be sort of lost in that sort of side scroll of all of the brands and individuals that they're following that are doing things as well. So you want to do it, but you have to recognize like, hey, there's going to be a lot of stuff there. Same thing with posts. So all of this is going to be there. And so it's just about being present wherever somebody is. So this next tip, this is sort of counter to what we saw last year, what we recommended last year. So this is like an honest learning opportunity, though I think with still a caveat. Establishing your own Black Friday brand identity, having your own sort of hashtag or mention or thing that when people see it and you have this really, really broad influencer marketing campaign, they begin to associate these emojis or this hashtag with you as the brand. It further extends that sort of reach and familiarity with you, which will drive more results. And we see that with brands all the time. Pretty Little Thing was one example that we called out here, where they have not Black Friday, but PLT Pink Friday. And there's this association and this consistency in message where they're putting this out all of the time. That consistency and how much total content's going out, how many partnerships are, that is going to be critical. If you're going to have a hashtag that you use for one day, you're working with 10 or 12 influencers, probably doesn't make sense, right? There's not going to be enough time uh, to really make that value occur. But if you're priming the pump by putting out content a week or two in advance and they're using this consistently, there is a way for you to build on this brand identity for next year and the following year. Now, don't expect to cash in all at once. It's just unlikely to happen, especially in a really competitive landscape that is digital marketing these days. But you're sort of planting the seed to continue to build on it for future years, but it definitely requires high reach, high visibility, and high frequency. Otherwise, it's just not worth doing. Just if you're going to do a big flash sale the day of, you have a few partnerships, there might be even significant investments, but it's just a few in terms of total reach. Just focus on the core message, get those sales. Don't worry about this. Don't busy yourself with this. And this comes from experience of somebody that has worked on a brand, built up a personalized hashtag that ultimately just saw very, very little use after this one spike from one person. Just not worth it. So similar to that idea of branding your Black Friday, but I'd say a little bit different is this consistency in message, as well as you can use emojis and hashtags to try to draw attention to it. But using the same phrase so that across all of your influencers and across all of their messaging helps ensure that people know when this is a part of the campaign, right? When is this a part of this, initiative that's coming out, this sale that's coming out? So a couple of examples that we saw. So same thing with Kids Nova, Fashion Nova, doing the impossible again, right? Each of their influencer posts leading up to that sale, the day of the sale, it's using that repetitiously, and that could be really, really helpful for you as a brand, as well as if somebody's absorbing content. Oh, okay, this is about that sale again. That frequency really, really helps drive the ultimate sale. It's similar to remarketing ads, where it's not about showing somebody a retargeting ad one time; it's about showing it to them 8 to 10 times over the next several days to get them to ultimately take action. Same thing with Pretty Little Thing. Here's a use of emojis where all of their creators are using these hearts and a unicorn, whatever the content is, and then encapsulating it with more unicorns and hearts. That level of consistency really can help associate with the brand. Now, if you're going to have creators that aren't going to use it, if it's going to be very, very inconsistent, I wouldn't stress about it. This is not a thing that's going to drive sales, but it does help with that brand awareness and brand affinity and identity. All right. We're moving pretty quickly here. We've got a few more slides left. Again, I want to encourage anybody, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. Jumping back into our tips, one of the things that I think is really, really important, and as Nick was pulling this data, we saw it play out where like you can get really frustrated sentiment if you don't do it right. You want offers and discounts to be completely clear and transparent from the influencer to their audience. You don't want to promote up to 90% off if the thing that is 90% off is one good that nobody wants in a size that no one will buy, right? You need to be more consistent, because what can happen is creators can get a backlash, right, from their audience. Hey, this sale is horrible. You said this, but not this. You're going to lose a partnership. They're probably going to want to pull the content down. No, maybe with contracts, which we had a webinar about this a few months back, you can keep them from keeping the content down, but you'll probably lose that partnership and the results from it. So be honest and straightforward with the sale, with what's reasonable, what people can expect. If you feel like, yeah, but the sale that I can actually offer just isn't that good, that's the cue to go to management and say, hey, our sale is just not, it's not very good. What can we do to make this a little bit better? How can we bundle things? How can we package things together? We want to be competitive out there, but saying, some stuff is on clearance, but almost nothing is on clearance. We're just gonna have a lot of frustrated end users that are gonna associate that with this creator and with us as a brand. So avoid vague offers. Try to put in what are the stipulations? What do you have to purchase? First time buyers receive X. That just needs to be what the offer is. And align that goal and those expectations with like our objective here is to find new first time buyers, right? And so that's where we're going to limit it. Or if you want to drive maximum total sales, extend that offer to everybody, not just the first time people, because you're going to make people really, really frustrated. So we can see here in this parade example where this creator is saying 70% off certain things and then up to 50% off again if you use this code, right? Trying to be very, very clear with the instructions, with what's involved, trying to avoid being misleading. I don't even think it's always intentional, but sometimes you don't feel your offer is that great. You could say, oh, well, maybe it's up to this. If you include free shipping, that's another 10%. Don't do any of that. You want to avoid any of those, any sort of that negative sentiment from followers. Uh, in terms of partnering with folks, if you're selling actual goods, if they're physical goods, show just that discounted product, that thing that's available for the offer, and show it in use in real time. Uh, Showing something as sort of like a product listing ad, as it were, sort of a listing on a website. Like here's an image of this thing. It doesn't have any sort of emotional resonance or appeal. It's just a picture. It's not that helpful. So showing a creator using the item and showing the actual item that is on sale. Not, again, going back with the previous message, show the thing that they can actually get for the discount, not the new thing that's not discounted, but you can buy the old thing for a discount. You'll just get very, very frustrated users, really, really poor sentiment, and you will probably lose some partnerships with creators who feel like, hey, you kind of tanked my image here. Good example here from Rhino Shield is creator taking a picture. Obviously, somebody's taking a picture of them, but using the case that they have, right? Showing it in person live so you can see it. And this is the product that's actually on sale if you would like it. Or maybe all of them are, whatever it may be, but you want to be clear and you want to avoid misleading people. You might have a new product that you've launched. You might not be able to discount it. Find a different product to promote then. You're not going to see sales take off from this. You're going to get a lot of complaints. Your customer support is going to be dealing with a lot of people saying, hey, how come I can't get this coupon code for this? Oh, that product's not eligible. So try to avoid all of that. This will probably be a staple forever. And if you think that this is no longer important, you're sort of missing the boat here. This is one of the things that we'll talk about in a couple of weeks is around like clear calls to action, standard things to do to make sure that you're telling users what you want them to do. And so making sure that the creators that you have are using link in bio as that sort of standard call to action, pull them over to there if they're using content that doesn't have links within it. It needs to be completely straightforward. This is where you get the code. This is where you get the offer. And we want you to go over here. And there's also benefits of having that link in bio for people that don't peruse the content, but they're just looking at that creator. Oh, this looks interesting. So there's that added value and reach of the offer without having to absorb the content. Don't limit to where you put the content to just like, oh, I can put a link in a story. So this is where I'm going to have that, but they don't want to put the link in their bio. Really stress in those partnerships with creators. This will not be effective for us if you can't put this here. We have to do this, and for this amount of time at least. Now it's November 2nd. Maybe there's some wiggle room with some of these partnerships that you've already got in place to try to get this in place. Maybe it's just going to be good learning for next year, but definitely a critical step that you don't want to miss. That was a whirlwind. That's 9 tips just to remember for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There's no comments so far, which I think is a good reminder that maybe everybody's got these boxes checked. Nobody has any questions. We're going to jump into other critical reminders, table stakes, things to not forget as you're going into the holiday period. If you're a marketer, it's high stress environment. You really need to see that performance see itself through all of the rest of the year. And so there's a few things I want you to keep in mind as you're going through this, just to put all of your results into context. So the first is aligning your goals and activities with the sort of outcome that you're trying to drive with this initiative. If you're investing, 5 or 6 figures into a few celebrity partnerships to grow brand awareness, remind everybody like our goal here isn't to drive X many sales. We should see some sales, but our goal is to grow brand awareness and affinity for us as a brand that it's a longer term investment. We want to see this build into next year, not just a bunch of sales now, because that's the nature of the partnership that we created. But you need to make sure that you're clearly stating that again. You need to have that at the forefront of all of your reporting. Here was what we were trying to do with this partnership. Here's what we're trying to do with this partnership. And then also map those activities. So for brand awareness, you're prioritizing reach. You want partnerships with many influencers, ideally multiple posts, but limited audience overlap. You want to try to get as many folks that are relevant to you as possible because your goal is familiarity with you as a brand, not necessarily I want to drive direct sales. Your overall conversion rate from this is going to be smaller than what maybe you would even expect. Even if you were partnering with somebody that was a huge celebrity, just that's not what the goal is. That's not what the alignment is. That's not what the message is. So the results are just going to magically follow. You're investing for the future. On the contrary, if you're thinking about direct sales, this is where reach matters a little bit less. It's much more about frequency. I want to make sure I'm driving a purchase, really care about brand awareness. In this case, you're probably thinking about smaller partnerships as micro and nano influencers. You want to have campaigns run for a while, mostly because it's more affordable when you're working with those smaller creators and you're trying to drive direct sales. It's really expensive to do celebrity partnerships or even B-grade celebrity partnerships or really, really high-scale influencer partnerships for a long time. They just might not have that cost. It's more reasonable on the direct sales side with those smaller influencers. The content can be a little bit more sophisticated. You can have people do a little bit more creativity here. And you want to try to find influencers speaking to the same people. We have great reports for finding audience overlap. And so if you have significant overlap, that's actually really good for direct response because these people are seeing the same message from 2 different people in 2 different contexts. And so it only props up your brand and your offer and it'll drive them to take more action. So align your goals and activities. Make sure you align those expectations as well with the internal stakeholders. If you're selling a huge catalog, if you're a retailer, or maybe you're a brand that just has a huge catalog, try to focus on individual or single categories if you're focused on direct response. Presenting the problem of choice to people. Hey, come by here. We sell 10,000 different things and I have no idea what I should promote. They're going to say, I have no idea what I should buy. But if you focus on a category that's really, really strong for you, maybe it has the margin that you need, maybe you know it drives repeat sales, just focus there. Even if you have a large catalog, you might get residual sales on other categories, but you're going to see greater direct response if you focus, even if you have a large catalog. Now, for brand awareness, it matters a little bit less. Maybe you still want to focus on a good category, but you can talk about the breadth of products because you're really trying to prop up why people should come back, not necessarily that they should purchase this thing right now. These are 2 completely different ideas. What marketers tend to do, and I'm speaking from experience, is you just sort of think if I do this, they're still going to buy, right? The answer is no, they're not. You need to be comfortable with like if the call to action is for brand awareness, I should not expect a bunch of sales. If the call to action is for sales, I should expect that my brand awareness is going to be a little bit lower because the reach is just going to be a little bit lower because I'm finding somebody that's really speaking to my audience. And that's okay. But these are different things. You might get some benefit on both sides, but don't just assume, oh, yeah, well, we'll probably still get a 2% conversion rate from all of this stuff because that's what we get from our website. You can tell that to yourself, right? But I wouldn't say that in a meeting publicly to anybody. Measuring performance, you need to think about the picture as a whole, right? You can think about the channel. How is this channel doing? But one thing that people tend to forget as we get more and more sophisticated with digital marketing and their attribution and all of these things, we tend to forget like there's a lot of gaps in how we see where people come from, right? They consume content on their mobile device. They go to their work computer and they do some research. They make their ultimate purchase on a personal computer. We're going to have a gap in what's going on. So we need to be thinking about this as how did the whole overall performance of the company lift during this period compared to last year? not compared to last week. Cyber Monday, Black Friday, these are going to be great days. They're always going to outperform the previous week. What did they do last year compared to what we saw normally? What was our baseline of growth last year during this period? And what do we see this year with this partnership? And then we should see some residual value from these activities because you are associating it with a brand. Don't obsess over individual content performance. Now, if everything from a particular creator was not great, it's worth looking to see if they had an authentic audience. Were they doing anything fraudulent? Was there anything that maybe tells you why this one creator was an outlier? But if in general everybody did pretty well, there's a post here or there that didn't perform as well, it's good to know. It doesn't necessarily mean this is a bad creator. We just need to put it all into context. Always, always, always provide visibility and performance as you go throughout the whole period. If things are great, you look great the entire time. If things are not great, you get everybody out ahead of it. Hey, it's not taking off like we wanted. We need to do something to adapt. Maybe you can take some action for the rest of the holiday period. Never, never, never wait. Never a pleasant surprise. People always like getting good news. Getting bad news as the surprise is worse. So always make sure that you're providing that visibility. Tools like Hype Auditor, we have external campaign links that you can share. They have encrypted. They're encrypted links so that you can just share them with somebody that doesn't have a seat. They can sort of follow performance, and that's really, really valuable. So you keep everybody on the same page. One user behavior reminder: Black Friday, people buy for themselves. TVs, appliances, high average order value because they're buying for themselves. After Black Friday, there's this shift to I'm buying for others, whether it's for Hanukkah or it's for Christmas or Kwanzaa, whatever it might be. Gifting, if it's coworker gifting or friend gifting. It's not that we don't love them as much. It's just that we don't have enough money to buy them all in appliance, right? So those average order values are going to be lower that entire period. They're going to be buying maybe one product from your website. So keep that in mind, that user behavior in mind as you're thinking about conversion rates, as you're thinking about margins and average order value. There's just two sort of distinct paths that people tend to take during this period. Now, we like to get our Christmas shopping done during Black Friday, Cyber Monday if we can, because it saves money. But yeah, usually even for myself, this is a period where it's like, that golf club that I've been wanting, is it on sale? Now I will buy it, but I'm not buying any of my friends a golf club as well. So just to recap, we dove into holiday trends and seasonality, 9 tips for nailing your influencer marketing efforts, really trying to focus on that execution, and then other seasonal reminders. Again, I'll open up if anybody has any questions or comments as we've gone through here. But we are 2 weeks away from where we should really begin to feel that holiday seasonality picking up. I imagine a significant percentage of folks here, whether they're a brand or an agency, have clients or themselves already thinking about we're launching our Black Friday sale next week, early Black Friday. Everybody's doing it, right? And so you should begin to see that seasonality pick up. It's never too early to begin posting and priming the pump for that big sale day if you're going to have a flash sale that day. But beginning to invest now is really, really important. Pause for just a second here with Q&A. There aren't many questions, which I'm going to attribute to my effectiveness in leading this conversation and the slides being so beautiful. I hope you all appreciate the autumn themed slides because it is still November, even though in Raleigh it's pretty cold. It's not quite the holidays yet, so I just wanted to avoid wintry things. I want to hold on to fall as long as we can until we at least get to Thanksgiving here in the U.S. I don't see any Q&A, so I just want to send out a reminder. I talked about this at the beginning, but we've got 2 upcoming webinars. I encourage folks to join. We'll be sending out an email about this first one, I believe tomorrow, to register. But on November 14th, 1 p.m. Eastern, so this is a Tuesday, not a Thursday or Friday, we're going to be diving into components of compelling influence marketing content. So what makes certain posts work really, really well? Why do they fall flat? What are things that you always need to have no matter what? What are things that you should avoid based off of who you're reaching out to, what your objective is, what the audience is doing? So components of compelling content, we're putting that out in about a week and a half. And then after that, in December, we'll be doing our live series event. We'll be diving into Cyber 5 results for brands from this year. So we'll actually be using our tools live and in the moment to to glean insights. What happened in this space? Why did it seem to work well? Who were they partnering with? So if you are new to our webinars, we've sort of diverged now. We have two different series. One is more webinar-ish and one's more tactical usage. And so that's what that live Cyber 5 winners is going to be, a really analytical deep dive using our tools into what's happening in the competitive landscape, who's winning and losing. And if there aren't any questions, I want to thank everybody for joining me again today for our sort of bullet train speed of a webinar. You all have to get back to your holiday prep. It is November, but I want to thank everybody for joining. We'll be sending out the link for the stream. You can pass along to others. You can also use the one that you got in the email today. But beyond that, I look forward to seeing you all in about a week and a half. Have a great one.